Anyone can muscle through the hard things, but it's the impossible that forces you to grow, to shed your skin and face yourself. I used to think I understood that, back when the biggest challenge in my life was keeping a secret stitched under my own clothes. For as long as I can remember, I'd been living two lives, one under the daylight, and another under my bedroom light, with the door locked and the world forgotten. Dressing as a girl wasn't a habit or a fantasy. It was a quiet rebellion against the person I was supposed to be. Each time I slipped into that hidden version of myself, I promised it would be the last. And each time, I broke that promise. I was meticulous, cautious to the point of paranoia. Makeup wiped away, hair combed flat, clothes hidden before anyone could knock on the door. I always made sure Ethan was the only one anyone saw. Until the day came when I realized Ethan wasn't the real one at all, and the safety I'd built my life around was the very thing about to fall apart. I'd just stepped out of the shower, jeans and a plain t-shirt, clinging to damp skin, when Mom called me into the den. Her usual gentle blue eyes had turned gray, cold, sharp, stormy. Even her smile was gone, replaced by a hard line of red lipstick that looked angry just sitting there. "I got this in the mail today, Ethan." She handed me a letter. I could tell from the thick, cream-colored paper and the typed address that it was from a lawyer. Dad's lawyer. "That bastard divorced me," she said, her voice trembling between fury and disbelief. "Just up and left. Quit his job, moved away, and now he wants me to sell the house so he can take half the money." I was 16, old enough to understand betrayal, but not the legal maze of divorce. To me, it seemed simple. He left, we stayed. The house should be ours. "I don't think he can do that, Mom. I mean, I'm still under 18. She sighed, the anger draining into exhaustion. "I'll check. You may be right, Ethan." From that day on, life became a tug-of-war: lawyers, bills, late dinners, and tension thick enough to taste. Mom's lawyer told her to let him handle it, and he did mostly by telling Dad to go to hell. That's when the next letter came, the one that made everything worse. Dad wanted me to live with him. The thought made my stomach twist. He'd always been overbearing, always drank too much, and the idea of living under his roof again was like volunteering for punishment. "The lawyer says he can demand visitation," Mom explained, her voice thin with worry. "But you're old enough to choose. You can refuse, Ethan, though, if you do. I know he'll make trouble about the house or our savings. I already moved what I could out of reach, but—" "Do I have to go?" I asked, my throat tight. She hesitated, then gave a small, miserable nod. "Unless we want a long court fight, or find another way to make him back off." And that's when the stupidest idea imaginable crept into my head. It came quick, bright, absurd, then I shoved it away. But it wouldn't die. Because I knew my father. He wasn't a violent bigot, but he sure wasn't tolerant either. Minorities, gay people, anything that didn't fit his narrow world made him uncomfortable, angry even. I knew what would disgust him most. If I showed up looking like a girl? No. I pushed it away again. That was suicide. But the thought kept circling back, taunting me. I couldn't stand the idea of leaving Mom alone, of being forced into his world. And so, about 10 days later, after dinner, when the silence between us had grown familiar and heavy, I said it. "Mom," I started, staring at the table. "I have an idea to make Dad leave us alone." She didn't look up. "Oh?" "I could, maybe, dress as a girl. You know how he feels about people like that. If he saw me like that, maybe he'd be too ashamed to want me around." The words tumbled out, fragile and absurd. I braced myself for laughter, or shock, or scolding. But what I got was silence. Then her voice calm, steady, cutting through the room like wind through glass. "That would work, considering how much practice you've had." I froze. "In fact," she went on, looking up now with an unreadable expression, "it's an excellent idea, Ethan." My chest tightened. You knew?" "I've known for a long time." she said simply. If you do it right perfectly, he'll just get mad and send you home. But if you mess up even once, he might try to hurt you, especially if he's been drinking. If you mean this, we'll have to do it together. You'll have to become the perfect girl. That's when I realized I'd opened a door, one that couldn't easily be closed again. She leaned back and studied me. Tell me something, Ethan. Why did you suggest it? It was a good question. Why did I like dressing as a girl? I wanted to lie, but there was no point. I could still remember the first time. The scent of lipstick, the soft weight of fabric brushing my legs, the taut pull of nylon over skin, the way a bra hugged me, reshaped me, the sound of heels clicking against the floor, foreign, delicate, thrilling. The first time I saw myself in the mirror, not as a boy pretending, but as someone else, someone softer, freer, alive, I thought she was beautiful. I still did, every time I became her. Mom smiled faintly, as if she already knew all of it. Never mind, she said. I already know the answer. Why don't you go change, Ethan? Let me meet this girl of yours. That way, we'll know exactly what we have to do, Mom said, her voice even, businesslike, as though we were planning a home repair instead of a secret transformation. It hit me then this would be the first time she'd ever see me dressed. I hesitated. In the morning, Mom? She nodded, calm as ever. Nothing more was said. That night, I barely slept. Mom wasn't just any woman at 5'6", blonde, graceful. She carried herself with quiet strength that turned heads without trying. Her figure, her poise, the way her laughter could change the air in a room she was everything I wanted to be, but never could. Her blue eyes sparkled when she was happy, turned cloudy gray when she was hurt. She was who I admired most, not Dad, never him. At 38, she was still beautiful, but more than that, she was sharp, steady, and a lot smarter than I'd ever given her credit for. She didn't say it, but I knew the moment she agreed, she'd hold me to it. I had to give it my best, even if it was just the two of us, even if I was terrified. Because by suggesting this plan, I'd admitted something much deeper, not just that I was willing to dress as a girl, but that a part of me wanted to. The next morning, after breakfast, I went straight to my room and shut the door behind me. My heart was already racing. This wasn't playtime anymore. This was a test one I couldn't fail, not with Mom watching. I started with the hair remover I'd never dared to use before. The smell was chemical and harsh, the sting immediate. But when I stepped into the shower afterward, rinsing away the foam, my skin felt unnervingly smooth, foreign, and soft. I took a deep breath, staring at my reflection, then reached for the drawer. The panties were the first thing. My only pair, worn and faded, but they still made my stomach flip when I pulled them on. Makeup came next: foundation, powder, a touch of blush, trembling hands dragging color across my face. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then came the bra, the birdseed breast forms, the waist nipper that bit into my ribs, the pantyhose, and finally the skirt and blouse. The skirt tan, pleated, short enough to make my legs look longer. The blouse white, soft, round neckline, short sleeves that brushed my shoulders. I slipped into my white heels, the only ones I owned, and felt my calves tighten as I stood. Lipstick, a ponytail, clip-on earrings, one last glance in the mirror. It was me, but not. Close enough to scare me. I opened my door slowly, the hinges creaking loud as thunder in my ears. My heels clicked softly down the hallway. I stopped at the kitchen doorway, breath held. Mom was there in white shorts and a red blouse, the morning light catching the gold in her hair. "Turn around and let me see, Ethan." I obeyed, turning slowly, feeling exposed, my pulse hammering in my throat. "That's very nice, dear," she said, studying me with a faint smile. Her eyes pinned me there. I froze, unable to answer. "Come with me," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. She led me to her vanity, the big oval mirror surrounded by brushes, bottles, and soft light. I sat down as she stood behind me, her fingers gentle but firm as she began brushing my hair. She used barrettes and spray, working with the speed and precision I could never match. In minutes, my hair looked effortlessly natural, soft, shaped, alive. "I think that's better, don't you?" she asked. I could only nod, staring at the reflection that seemed more real by the second. Mom studied me in silence, the kind that stretched and folded time. Then she spoke. "I think we should talk about how we're going to make this work, don't you?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me," she said, her voice calm, curious. "Have you ever gone out dressed like this? I don't mean Halloween." I knew exactly what she meant. "No. Have you ever thought about it?" There was no sense lying now. "Once in a while, I guess." "Why?" "Because," she said, turning the brush in her hands, "after all this time hiding your little hobby, and with your father in the picture again, I thought maybe you'd try it. You look lovely, and after all, going out will become normal for you soon enough." Her eyes were still that steady, confident blue, the same eyes that comforted me as a kid when I scraped my knee. But now they made my stomach drop. The idea of leaving the safety of the house dressed like this terrified me. Still, a small part of me wondered if maybe I could do it just once, if I was careful enough. "I think you should try it," she said softly. "But first, what should I call you? Ethan doesn't quite fit when you look like this." My breath caught. She wanted to know my name, the one I only whispered to myself in the mirror. I don't know if I can do this, Mom," I said quietly. "Yes, dear," she replied, smiling. "You can. Now tell me your name." "Chloe." Her smile widened. "Oh, that's a lovely name. Stand over there, Chloe, and let me see all of you." I moved where she pointed, hands clasped nervously in front of me. "Stand straight and look at me," she said. I did. Her gaze swept over me, slow and deliberate. Then, without a word, she opened a drawer, pulled out her measuring tape, and began to take my measurements, precise, methodical, like she was mapping the beginning of something she'd already decided would happen. "If this is going to work," Mom said, looping the measuring tape back around my waist, "your clothes will have to fit better. And we need to do something about your hips and bust line and, of course, your waist." I stood there like a mannequin, arms slightly raised, trying not to flinch as she took note after note. I figured she was just measuring for a few new outfits, but she had something much bigger in mind. "We have to start from the beginning, Chloe," she said finally, using my name like she'd been saying it for years. "That means proper hips, a real bust, and a smaller waist. Once we've got that, we'll deal with makeup, clothes, and everything else." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean? Why can't I just use birdseed like before? And my waist is already pretty thin." Mom chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Yes, but you're still built like a ruler, honey. Most 17-year-old girls aren't so straight up and down. We'll fix that first." She paced around me once more, calculating silently, and handed me a small black handbag with a long strap. "I put your wallet and lipstick in there, Chloe. Ready?" My mouth went dry. "Ready?" I wasn't sure what scared me more, the idea of being seen, or the idea that I wanted to be. Mom took my arm and led me out to the car. The morning sun hit me like a spotlight, the click of my heels on the driveway louder than it should have been. We drove in silence until she turned into a small plaza I didn't recognize. "When your grandmother had breast cancer," she said, easing into a parking spot, "this is where she came for her prosthetics. They make breast forms so realistic you'd never know the difference. I thought we'd see if they can help you." I froze halfway out of the car. "But won't they figure out I'm a—" She cut me off gently. "No, dear. You're a flat-chested girl, and that's all. We're just correcting that today. Now come along." The shop smelled like a mix of rubber, powder, and faint perfume, something oddly medical but still feminine. A woman behind the counter looked up, recognizing Mom instantly. Can I help you? She asked pleasantly. Yes, Mom said, placing a hand on my shoulder. My daughter needs your expert help. The woman's eyes flicked over me, once professional, sharp, unfooled. If she's male, she said matter-of-factly, I'll need to know. The forms are different. Men's chests are flatter. It takes extra shaping to make them look natural. Mom nodded, unbothered. You're right. She is male. But we'd like that to stay between us. Of course, the woman said simply. Come with me, dear. I followed her to a small fitting room, Mom right behind me. Within minutes, I stood bare-chested, red-faced, and trembling. The fitter worked with detached precision, studying my chest, testing colors against my skin tone. She didn't laugh, didn't smirk, she just worked. After about 20 minutes, she found a match. A+, she declared. Technically a B cup, but a softer shape, perfect for her frame. I barely breathed as she created the molding, tinting, adjusting, until finally she applied adhesive and pressed them carefully into place. The cool weight settled against me, followed by the faint pressure of the bra strap as she smoothed everything down. Then she stepped back. Have a look. I turned toward the mirror and froze. They didn't look fake. They didn't even look attached. They looked real, like they'd grown there overnight. Two soft, perfect curves rising from my own chest, transforming me from boy in makeup to something far more convincing. Mom smiled behind me. They're beautiful, Chloe, so real-looking. Her voice was warm, proud even. I could only stare, hands hovering near my chest, scared to touch in case the illusion shattered. You can get dressed now, sweetheart, the fitter said kindly. She and Mom stepped out while I slipped back into my blouse. The fabric brushed across my new curves light, electric, strange. When I came out, Mom gave me a once-over. That bra's a little tight, but it does make you fill out nicely. She was smiling, clearly pleased with her handiwork. I was still dizzy, lost between disbelief and a dangerous thrill. Now, she said briskly, you'll need proper lingerie. We can get that at the mall. Before I could protest, she'd already turned into the parking lot of the big shopping center. Since we're spending your father's money, she added dryly, why not make a day of it? Hair, nails, makeup, the works. I should have argued. I should have said no. But standing there with my reflection still burning in my mind, feeling the soft pull of the bra and the sway of the skirt around my legs, something inside me shifted. Confidence. Or maybe surrender. 2 hours later, when I stepped out of the salon, I hardly recognized myself. My once mousy brown hair was now a rich auburn, softly curled around my shoulders, with neat bangs and airy volume. My nails gleamed a soft red, and the makeup done by a pro gave my face a warmth and balance I'd never seen before. Mom was waiting outside, arms full of shopping bags. She looked up, saw me, and smiled. Well, she said, her eyes lighting with pride and just a touch of awe. Look at you, Chloe. God, you're gorgeous, Chloe. Mom said it like she couldn't quite believe it herself, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. Thanks, Mom. What's in the bags? A few things for you, she said casually, though her grin betrayed her excitement. Enough to get you started. We can always add more later. Right now, I'm starving. We grabbed lunch at a small cafe near the Plaza sandwiches, coffee, and the quiet buzz of people around us. I felt eyes brush over me, none of them suspicious, and each time my pulse steadied just a little more. Afterward, Mom steered us toward Macy's, walking straight into the lingerie department like she owned the place. I didn't buy any lingerie earlier because we need to measure you again, she explained. Plus, I found a padded panty brief that I think you should try on before we go any further. My stomach fluttered as she handed it to me and nudged me toward the fitting room. Inside, under the harsh lights, I stripped down to my panties and tried it on. The moment the fabric hugged my hips, I saw it curves. Real curves. The brief gave me a rounded shape that looked natural, soft, and right. Mom peeked in. Perfect. Now let's get you a bra that actually fits. A few minutes later, she returned with one in her hand. Try this, Chloe. The new bra was snug in a way that felt secure, almost protective. When I pulled my blouse back on, the difference was startling. Everything sat where it should, balanced, feminine. We spent the next hour moving through racks and counters, panties, slips, two smaller waist nippers, pantyhose, three more bras, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, and in the shoe department, black heels, tan sandals, and a pair of red pumps that made me blush when Mom insisted I take them. Finally, with bags piled high, Mom laughed. I think that's enough for one day, don't you? I could barely answer. My heart was pounding with the kind of happiness that made no sense, and every kind of sense at once. Every secret wish, every hidden dream, all of it was happening. Why don't you drive us home, Chloe? She said, tossing me the keys. When we got back, we carried everything upstairs. Mom offered to help me unpack, but I wanted to do it myself. My room, my space. I opened the dresser drawers and started sorting boy things on one side, girl things on the other, until I stopped and realized there wasn't room for both. One by one, I emptied out the old clothes, folding them neatly into boxes and setting them aside. The new clothes filled the drawers easily, their colors soft and bright and alive. I hung the skirts and dresses in my closet, lined up my new shoes, and stepped back. The sight made me dizzy, like the room itself had changed shape around me. In the garage, I found a scrap of plywood and sawed it down, hammering together a makeshift vanity. It was crude, ugly even, but mine. I carried it to my room and set it against the wall. Mom came in silently, handed me an old slick tablecloth, and I draped it over the top. She gave a small nod of approval, then left me to my work. I arranged my mirror, lined up the brushes and compacts, and placed my makeup neatly in front. My own vanity, my own world. That night, I didn't bother changing out of my jeans and tee. Mom was quiet through dinner, thoughtful, but not distant. The air between us felt full of unspoken things, pride, maybe, or understanding. The next morning, she stood at my door in her work clothes, purse on her shoulder. I have to go back to work, Chloe, she said, smiling. But how about dinner out tonight? Get real fancy, and we'll go to Harborview down by the waterfront. Okay, Mom. After she left, I poured coffee and returned to my room. Some of the clothes she'd bought yesterday I hadn't even seen yet. Excitement sparked in my chest as I began trying things on. 3 skirts, 3 dresses, a suit, 4 blouses. Every piece felt new, deliberate. Most of the skirts and dresses fell just above the knee feminine, but not flashy except the tan pleated skirt and one royal blue sheath dress that hit mid-thigh. The dress was stunning smooth fabric, fitted waist, sleeves brushing my upper arms, and a low rounded neckline. It practically shimmered under the light. That was the one. I had all day to get ready. I ran a bubble bath and sank into it, the warm water carrying away the nerves. For the first time, I shaved carefully, methodically, catching every stray hair. When I stepped out, I wandered into Mom's room and used her lotion, rubbing it over my skin until I smelled like flowers. With 5 hours to spare, I laid out everything I'd need: dress, underwear, shoes, jewelry, each piece arranged perfectly on the bed. Then I made lunch, washed the dishes, and sat down at my vanity. The new foundation matched my skin so perfectly it almost vanished. As I smoothed it over my face, I felt a calm, practiced rhythm take over. Powder set it in place, a soft copper eyeshadow, then a faint line of plum, and over that, a hint of gray. The sponge blurred it all together, creating a warm gradient that made my eyes seem deeper, older. Liquid liner came next, a steady black line sweeping outward, followed by a touch of pencil beneath. A hint of rose blush on the cheeks, blended and soft, brought everything to life. When I smiled at the reflection, it smiled back with quiet confidence. I was getting good at this. I slipped into pantyhose, then the padded panty brief again. My reflection changed shape before my eyes' curves, and softness where there hadn't been any before. I caught my breath. It wasn't perfect, but it was close. Close enough to believe. The waist nipper was one of the new ones, tighter, more complex, and I fumbled with the hooks at first, not used to the tug of something that reshaped me so completely. I zipped it up, exhaling as my waist shrank beneath the pressure. My usual 28 inches melted to 24, and I could feel the transformation, not just see it. The bra came next, a white lace demi-cup with a gentle push-up. The moment I clasped it, I could see the difference. The breast forms rose slightly higher, pressing together to form a soft, natural curve. My reflection shifted again, less imitation, more embodiment. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was becoming. The royal blue sheath dress slid over my head like liquid silk, hugging my new contours before settling neatly into place. I zipped it, smoothed the fabric over my hips, and looked at myself in the mirror. My breath caught. In the span of a few days, my entire world had inverted. I had stumbled into this an act, a disguise, a desperate plan, but now I stood there staring at someone real, someone alive. The thought of going back to being Ethan felt distant, absurd. I slipped into the black heels, the ones that made my calves tense and my stride deliberate. From the jewelry box, I chose the silvery pearl earrings and a single strand of pearls that rested just shy of a choker, perfectly following the neckline of my dress. The lipstick was a soft rose, the same shade as my nails, and I used a small brush to outline a subtle Cupid's bow before filling it in. Mom had bought me perfume, and I dabbed it lightly, wrists, elbows, and the hollow of my throat. The scent was delicate, confident, the kind of thing that lingered in memory. A few strokes of the brush and a mist of hairspray, and my hair fell into glossy curls that caught the light. A ring on each hand, a slim silver bracelet on my right wrist, and finally, I placed my wallet and lipstick in the new blue purse. When I caught my reflection again, I didn't move for a long time. The girl in the mirror wasn't a dream anymore. She was breathing. I walked downstairs on careful heels and waited in the family room for Mom. When she came through the door and saw me, she stopped cold, her eyes widening before breaking into a grin. "Damn! You look spectacular, Chloe!" I couldn't help but laugh softly, spinning once just to feel the fabric flare. "Thanks, Mom. I'll just go change," she said, still smiling. "Won't take long." I sat, nerves buzzing. When she returned an hour later, she looked stunning, black sheath dress, lace overlay, gold and black earrings, her blonde hair pulled back to show off her neck. The contrast between her bold red lipstick and my softer rose made her look powerful, radiant. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, heart pounding. On the drive to Harborview, the air between us was warm but charged. Mom kept glancing at me like she was trying to memorize this new version of me. "I can't believe how much you've changed, Chloe," she said finally. "From an average-looking boy to a ravishing young woman." At the restaurant, she pulled out a small camera, laughing as she snapped a few photos before we walked inside. I tried to smile naturally, but my stomach was tight with nerves. We were seated at a table for 4. I didn't think much of it. Restaurants did that all the time, until I saw a familiar figure walking toward us. My blood turned to ice. "Dad's here," I whispered. "Yes, I know, dear," Mom said calmly. "Just sit still. Be calm. Be calm." As if that were possible. Dad approached with a woman on his arm. He looked different. Thinner, cleaner, his posture steady for once. The woman beside him was elegant, professional, a cool smile and sharp eyes. "Rachel," Dad said, addressing Mom first. "And this must be Chloe." He gestured between us. "Chloe, this is Megan Benson." They sat down, and I looked at Mom in silent disbelief. She smiled reassuringly, too reassuringly. "Chloe," she said gently, "your father didn't run away like I told you. That was a cover story. He's been in treatment, a center, to help with his drinking and anger. Megan is here to meet us. And to evaluate you. Evaluate me? I echoed, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. Dad leaned forward, his tone almost solemn. All your life, you've struggled with who you are, trying to figure out if you're meant to be male or female. Obviously, you're male on the outside, but inside, that's been less certain. Your mother and I decided to give you the chance to be Chloe, to see how you'd respond, whether you'd feel comfortable in the role. I blinked, barely processing his words. All of this had been planned? Megan, the woman, smiled softly. Chloe, your father hired me to represent you. A distant relative, your great-great-aunt on your father's side, recently passed away. She left behind an enormous estate. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and for a second, I wasn't sure if I'd misheard her. An estate? Me? I sat frozen, pearl necklace cool against my skin, as everything I thought I understood about this plan began to unravel into something much larger and far more dangerous. Megan leaned forward, folding her hands neatly on the table. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. By the terms of the will, she began, you are the only person eligible to inherit the estate. It would be simple except for one, rather, unusual stipulation. I glanced at Mom, who looked like she already knew what was coming. The woman who wrote the will, Megan continued, was eccentric. Some would say visionary. She insisted on adding several extraordinary conditions. If any of them aren't met, the entire inheritance goes to charity. My pulse quickened. What kind of conditions? At the time she wrote the will, Megan said, what she asked for was considered impossible. But now, she gave me a measured smile. Now it might not be. She paused, letting the silence build. You, Chloe, are the only person in your family who fits her description. You alone meet the requirements. I leaned forward, both dreading and desperate to hear the rest. Her will demands that the rightful heir must not only live as a woman, but prove her commitment to that life before the age of 21. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. Prove it how? She wanted the heir to fully embrace womanhood not as a disguise, but as truth, Megan said softly. Your father and mother believe you're already halfway there. My mind was spinning. But I'm 16. This was supposed to be temporary, just a way to escape your father, Mom finished quietly. Yes. But Chloe, look at yourself. Look how easily you became her. Do you really think that's just for show? I turned to her, stunned by her tone, not angry, not mocking, but gentle. Determined. Mom went on. You've been dressing this way since you were little. We knew, long before you thought we did. This wasn't punishment, Chloe, it was a test. We wanted to see if you'd resist. But you didn't. I felt my throat tighten. You mean, all of this Harborview, the shopping, even this dinner was planned? Mom nodded slowly. If you hadn't embraced being Chloe, we would have stopped. But you didn't stop. You blossomed. I looked at Dad. He was quiet, arms folded, but his eyes, clear for once, held something like shame. I'm working on myself, kiddo, he said gruffly. I'm not here to control you anymore, just to be honest. Megan interjected. You're not being forced into anything, Chloe. But if you choose to continue to live fully as who you are, it would honor your great-aunt's will. And yes, you'd inherit the estate. More importantly, you'd be living as the person you've always wanted to be. I stared down at my plate, appetite gone, heart hammering. The room felt too small for all the thoughts crowding my head. Mom reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. Forget the money for a moment. Think about what you truly want. You've already found part of yourself these past few days. Don't run from that. I swallowed hard, glancing between them, my mother's hopeful eyes, my father's guilty silence, Megan's professional patience. And then it clicked. They had planned everything: the confrontation, the makeover, even my idea. But somewhere in their scheme, I had found something real. The girl in the mirror. The one I couldn't stop seeing. Yes, I said finally. The word came out small but certain. Dad exhaled, shoulders sinking in relief or regret, maybe both. Mom smiled. Then we'll begin helping you on Monday. One step at a time, Chloe. No pressure, no rush, just becoming who you're meant to be. When Megan told me I'd be enrolling at Madison's Academy, an all-girls school, a lump formed in my throat. It was clear my future was no longer my own. After that night, Dad and Megan left, and Mom became my teacher in every sense of the word. She showed me how to be a girl, not just look like one. How to walk, how to sit, how to hold a glass, how to move my hands when I talked. Every motion was deliberate, graceful, contained. We clashed over clothes, of course. I'd try something daring. She'd veto it with a raised eyebrow and a quiet, "Not in public, young lady." But over time, I learned what flattered me, what didn't. How color and cut could speak louder than words. By the time summer was over, I could carry myself without thinking about every step. Then came the doctor's endless checkups, quiet visits, pills, progress reports. The changes were slow, almost frustratingly so. I looked for signs in the mirror every morning, and when the first subtle differences appeared, I felt a cautious kind of joy. By Christmas, I looked enough like the other girls at Madison's that no one questioned me. The school was strict, traditional, and to my surprise, full of warmth. I learned more about posture, etiquette, and social grace than I ever had about math or history. The girls there accepted me quickly. Though I was shy at first, one of them even taught me how to reapply lipstick without a mirror. At home, Dad was rebuilding his life too. He came back from the treatment center sober, steadier. He started calling me kiddo again, sometimes Chloe, when he remembered. Once, to test him, I came downstairs wearing something that left very little to the imagination. His face went red, but instead of yelling, he just said quietly, "You look too much like your mother." That was the moment I realized he'd accepted it, maybe not understood it, but accepted it. And slowly, the shouting and the tension vanished. We started talking again, laughing. We even went fishing once, though I refused to touch the bait. By the next summer, the transformation was complete. My skin was smooth, my shape unmistakably feminine, my confidence unforced. I could slip into a dress, do my makeup, and feel completely myself, not pretending, not performing. Madison's taught more than academics. It taught independence. I learned sewing, dance, the kind of social grace that came from understanding how to listen. That was also the summer I met Ryan. He was the older brother of one of my classmates, polite, charming, and just rough around the edges enough to make my heart beat faster. We met at a small party, and by the end of the night, we were talking like we'd known each other forever. When he asked me out, I spent an hour deciding what to wear. I wanted him to like me, not the version my parents had crafted, but the girl I'd become. Dad met him that evening, standing in the doorway with the protective calm of a man who'd already rehearsed the conversation in his head. "Home by midnight," was all he said. The date was perfect. Dinner, a movie, a slow drive home under streetlights that seemed to hum. When he kissed me, it felt like everything I'd worked toward, every secret, every lie, every step had led to that moment. I didn't want it to end. Over the next few months, we grew closer. We talked about school, the future, and once, very briefly, what it meant to feel caught between two worlds. He never pressed, never pried. He just accepted me as I was. But beneath that peace, the promise I'd made, the inheritance, the strange conditions, the expectations hovered like a shadow. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it wasn't real. Until the day came when I couldn't anymore. Megan reappeared, always the professional, her tone polite but firm. "It's time, Chloe. The arrangement we discussed, it's being finalized." I froze. All the calm I'd built up vanished. "What about Ryan?" her expression softened. He doesn't need to know everything, not yet. I hated it, the secrecy, the manipulation, the way everyone seemed to make choices for me. I wanted to tell him everything, to be honest for once. But Mom and Dad said no, not until the time was right. So I waited. The waiting nearly broke me. When Ryan eventually learned part of the truth, that there were things about me I hadn't told him, he was hurt, confused, angry even. And I couldn't blame him. I cried for days before finally begging Mom to let me tell him everything. She hesitated, then nodded. He deserves the truth, Chloe. All of it. So that night, I asked Ryan to come over. I told him the story, the inheritance, the deception, the transformation, the entire twisted, unbelievable path that had led me here. He sat in silence for a long time, face pale, hands gripping his knees. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with anger, just disbelief. They did all that to you? I nodded. And I let them. Something in his expression softened then, the confusion, the hurt, and he reached across, taking my hand. You didn't let them, Chloe. You survived them. That was the first moment I realized I wasn't living someone else's plan anymore. I was writing my own. Ryan sat there in silence after Dad finished speaking. His eyes darted between my parents and me, his mind racing to connect everything he'd just heard. Finally, he let out a long breath and said quietly, So, Chloe isn't like other girls. She was born different. But she's still… her? Mom nodded. Exactly. She was born one way, but always felt another. And she's had the courage to live as her true self. That's the person you fell in love with. The room was still, the kind of stillness that comes before something either breaks or becomes stronger. I didn't dare move. Everything, my future, my family, my very sense of self, balanced on what Ryan would say next. He rubbed his temples, exhaled again, and looked at me. You know what? He said finally. I fell in love with Chloe. That's all that matters. It was simple, maybe too simple, but it was enough. The tension dissolved into something softer. Mom smiled. Even Dad looked relieved. Over the next few months, the chaos that had once defined our lives faded into something resembling peace. My parents' strange, imperfect architects of my transformation became almost ordinary again. Dad went back to work. Mom helped me navigate the new rhythm of adulthood. Ryan stood by me through it all. Whatever doubts he'd had were buried under loyalty and something bigger, love that refused to collapse under the weight of explanations. We began planning a future, one not dictated by wills, lawyers, or strange conditions, but by choice. Eventually, I inherited what was left of my great-aunt's estate, though it felt less like wealth and more like closure, a symbol of everything that had shaped me. The house, the name, the fortune, it all seemed small compared to what I'd gained. Myself. Ryan and I married quietly that spring, a small ceremony filled with people who finally saw me as I truly was. We moved into a sunlit home with creaking floors and a garden out back where I could breathe. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window, a stranger turned familiar, and smile at the memory of the boy who had once hidden behind his own fear. I had become the woman I was always meant to be, not because of anyone's scheme or a will's stipulation, but because, when it mattered most, I had chosen to be. And that, I realized, was the real inheritance all along.